How many of you have teenagers? Raise your hands. I want you to know how sorry I am about that. That's really too bad. Richard was a young man of about 21 years old when he came to live with us. He was injured in an automobile accident when he was like 2 years old or something. There was brain damage. So the right side of his body was paralyzed. He was placed kind of in a preferential treatment in school. And the little boy was really sharp, and he started learning how to work the system. And so he pretty soon didn't have to do the homework and didn't have to perform and didn't have to do the exercise or whatever was required. So when he graduated, he didn't learn a lot of stuff. So he got through high school conning the system, pretending like he couldn't function. The mother was a very rescuing mother and had sheltered this child. Can you imagine in the automobile accident, the parents blaming themselves? And so she had protected him and sheltered him and didn't require that he perform and couldn't stand to see him suffer. Sound familiar? Couldn't stand this at all. Loved him with all her heart. But he had everybody conned. Richard's mother couldn't do a thing with him. She'd want him to clean the bedroom, want him to make the bed, want him to do this. He just wouldn't do it. He was a nice kid and he'd help you sometimes, but he was a flake. And so he came over to our house because somebody thought we might be able to do something with him. And he was getting along pretty good. And then one day, I saw him playing chess with my son, who was in college, who was an honor student and had a scholarship. And my son is a good chess player and cannot stand to lose. He's one of those individuals. And Richard was beating his pants off. My son was angry and awful to live with. And did Richard care? No, he was beating him and playing. Richard was smart. And I saw him one day, my son, all frustrated and upset in a game. And Richard sitting there smiling, this kid who couldn't do algebra or math or anything. And I said, Richard, are you beating him? And he said, oh, yeah, I beat sometimes, you know. I said, Richard, I got your number. From now on, Richard, you pay, I think it was $30 a week for board and room. He says, I can't pay $30 a week. I said, yes, you can pay $30 a week. But it's going to give me great pleasure, Richard, to kick your bum out of here Saturday at 6 o'clock when that $30 is due again. See, he had spent all his money. People gave him money, he had money in the bank. Now he had gone through it. Now he's out of money. And so I told him, I said, Richard, if you don't make some money, you're going to be booted out of this house because I know you can do it. And so he cried and he pleaded and then he got mad and he stomped off, dragging that foot. And then I'd see him, you got a job, Richard? No, I don't have a job. We talked about it a little bit, and he said, well, I guess I could do windows. I said, it doesn't cost any money to do windows. We got a bucket in the garage, and we got a squeegee. You need a sponge, you need some soap, and you go down door to door downtown and do windows. I said, go on and do it. He says, well, I will. But did he do it? No. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Did he believe me? No. And I said, about Friday, I said, Richard, I want you to know how pleasurable it will be for me. I'm looking forward to this with great anticipation to throw you out of here. He says, well, you can't do that. What will I do? And it's cold and it's winter and I says, I don't want to hear that. You're out of here. And so Saturday about noon, he was bawling again. I said, Richard, you are out of here. Pack your junk. And he bawled. And so what did he do? He took off downtown, went door to door, come back with $50. Washed those windows just like that in an afternoon. And he just waved it under my nose. And I pretend to be irate. Well, you did it this week, but you'll never do it again, you bum. You're never going to do it, and I'm going to kick you out next Saturday. He says, no, you won't. So all week, what did he do? He quickly blew the rest of his money. And then at the end of the week, what was he doing? He was trying to make a deal again. I can't, and my foot hurts, and the bike's got a flat tire, and my arm's sore. You're out of here. You are out of here. I finally get my way. Saturday afternoon around 3 o'clock, he pedals off, comes back with $50, $60. He lived in our home for 8 months, and he learned to work. He learned that he can make money. He never once did not meet a payment. And why was it? Do you think his mother could get a dime out of him? What was the difference? There was nothing wrong with him, but he had conned. He didn't have to work. What's this all about? It's all about like economy of labor, economy of effort. As human beings, we don't seem to work more than we have to. It seems like we're always on the edge of our financial ability. It seems that when we have to, we go out and we make the money. It seems that I would like to get as much from my labor as I can. Is there anything wrong with that? And if I can get along with life and I'm 17 years old and I can get along with life and have a nice bed and, and I'm in here and you're supporting me and I don't have to do anything else, do you think I'm going to do anything else? Human nature, what is it like? It's going to take the easy road. And that's what Richard did. And that's what your kids do. And when you require more, they'll produce more. They are creatures of their environment. And you and I have allowed them to become exactly what they are. And when you lay down the rule and you diffuse the relationship in your home and take back all that anger out of the home and take down the tension and drop the tension and the anger and the emotion in your home and get into consequences and charts and token economy, you will find you have a totally new thing. So what you've been trying to do, and I tried to do for years, was to get everything to work without the structure, with just me telling them what to do. And why should I reward a kid for making his own stinking bed? He should make it. Nobody rewards me for making mine. Now, I hope this makes a lot of sense. Love and reason are not enough. There needs to be an environmental principle of consequation and earning and learning and struggling and growing. Because it's through the struggle and the growing, not the possessing. It's the struggling and the working and the trying. Does this make sense? That's what builds endurance. That's what builds character. That's what builds values. It isn't providing everything. If we create an environment here, it's a deprived environment. People are going to work to eat. They're going to work to get clothing. They're going to work to get shelter. They're going to work to have the car. They're going to work to buy their supplies. They're going to work to have the designer jeans. It's in the working and the struggling and the earning. That's how they develop the self-confidence. That's how they develop the self-image. That's how they develop the integrity. And it's not through giving them. So what we want is an environment that is rich with opportunity, not gifts. Rich with opportunity to earn and to learn and to work. An environment that's rich with opportunity, not possessions. We are not happy because of what we have. We are happy because of what we are. And there's a major difference. So as parents, we are not just teaching them to work to possess. We're teaching them to work, and in the process of working and in the process of struggling, we build the character that we want to build in these children. The sense of responsibility, not the sense of entitlement that I have it coming. So if mother and dad provide everything, cars, clothes, stereos, toilet paper, if mother and dad provide everything, there's no need to work. All right, so we want to create a deprivation if they don't work. Now, there's a time warp here. And the time warp is an interesting phenomenon. There can be a positive time warp, or there can be a negative time warp. And the time warp goes like this. If we start at the bottom and I go up here, and this is 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, 20. These are the ages going up from the bottom. And this is 6 months here and 0 here. I will ask you this. Are the problems that a 1-year-old face the same problems that a 6-year-old faces in life? Not at all. Does a 2-year-old child have problems? Yeah, they got problems. Does a two-year-old have problems? Does a 6-year-old? Yes, a 20-year-old. And so the problems become increasingly difficult, don't they? The point is that if we graduate from 2-year-old and we did the stuff that a 2-year-old is supposed to do and learned what a 2-year-old is supposed to do, doesn't that prepare us for the challenges of a 3-year-old? It does. Now, the time warp is something that happens when parents start rescuing. Parents deny their children the opportunity to solve the problems at their age-appropriate level. So there are certain problems and difficulties and challenges at each level. And as you progress from one level to the next, if you don't solve the problems at that level that you are at today because mother keeps rescuing you, you carry forward into the succeeding ages a real serious deficit, which makes it even harder to get along. If I start rescuing my little child, my little Herkimer, okay, he's doing fine here, but at 4 years old, he starts to hit people and he starts to be a bully and he does this and I've been rescuing him here. I send him out into a time warp, a negative time warp, and then I let him go at age 18. He's just not prepared for this. You got an 8-year-old emotional child here because you have been rescuing him all this time. And so what we've got now is a time warp. Do you understand what I mean by time warp? Time warp is when he goes out into space because you are rescuing and providing for that child. And when you do that, it's very detrimental to his growth. Because what he's doing when he's in this time warp, life is passing him by. His chronological clock keeps going. But his emotional clock, his psychological clock, his maturation clock has been retarded because you're rescuing. Now I want to tell you, it's easier to start letting go at 2 and at 3 than at 18. Can you see why? At 18, there's a lot of chips on the table, isn't there? But at age 2, it's easier. But we keep saying, well, I'll do it later. I'll rescue them here, or I'll take care of them, or this one time. And what does that tell the child every time you rescue them? Several messages. You're rewarding them. You're actually rewarding them for irresponsible behavior and telling him a lie that the world is going to be rescuing him. Plus, you're giving him a terrible insult. So there's a time warp here, and he can step out into that negative time warp. This happens when they go into drugs, people. When my son went into drugs about 14 years old, 13 or 14, he stepped into a time warp. And he stayed at 13 or 14 all the time he was on drugs. Why? Because drugs was the solution to his problem. He had pain, he had a problem. What did he do? He medicated with drugs. Did he face the real problems? Do you think he was dealing with age-appropriate problems at 15 and 16 and 17? No, he was spaced out. You don't have to deal with anything. You medicate on alcohol or drugs, or some of you are workaholics. And so you medicate on work, you medicate on rage, whatever you're into. So when my son decides to get back into the real world, what do we have here? We have a boy that's 19 or 20 coming back into society with a 13 or 14-year-old emotional capacity. And I got to keep telling myself when he's home that he's 13 or 14 or 12 or 9 years old emotionally or psychologically, and he's retarded there. And the longer they go, the greater the deficit. Now, there's a positive side to this time warp. If this is the normal range of things, and this is how people are usually going, you can give your child responsibilities. Supposing a kid goes to college, do you think that's a time warp in a sense? Are they gaining much more knowledge and much more experience? You think a boy goes into the Marine Corps for 2 years and he comes back in 2 years? When my sons came back, they said, I wish all my buddies at school could have this opportunity because they would be changed forever. So this boy goes out here. So college is a positive time warp. And by giving your child the right amount of responsibility, you can make a very, very experiential opportunity available to them for growth and development that is even beyond the norm, which is what they're getting here. Now, the norm in our society is very sick right now. The norm is very poor. Our kids are not learning responsibility. They're not learning a lot of stuff. And so your kids can learn through the token economy and learn through the nevertheless principles and learn through the work. Do you know what this is all about? It's not just getting them to do what you want them to do either. It's all about developing responsible human beings that care about other people and that are appreciative. There's another thing too, and I'll just go in this in passing, that we're far too competitive with our children. And we need to reward cooperation and not the competition. Reframing is an interesting thing. Like a parent can come in here and they can come into a counseling session and say, this kid is 9 years old, he is sassy, and he's obnoxious, and he's got a frown on his face, and my 14-year-old hasn't smiled in 2 years. And I don't know what to do with them. What can we possibly do? Now you can sit down and talk to them, say to the 9-year-old, hey, they're in age-appropriate behavior right now. And for the 14-year-old, he's right on schedule. And everything looks like it's okay. Can you see how reframing that can diffuse that emotional problem in that home? And they say, okay, this is the way kids are. Ours are pretty normal. And they back away from it. By reframing what you do in the home, you can totally change a kid's attitude about what's happening. In other words, in your homes, the payoff for cooperation has to exceed the payoff for competitiveness and selfishness. Or guess what you'll have? If selfishness is continually rewarded, what are you going to have? If selfishness and stealing and lying pays off, what are you going to have? So you need to set up your schedule so that you're rewarding the other things, cooperation. And you know bickering and complaining and arguing is habitual? They learn that it works. And hitting is habitual? Hitting works, man. There's immediate results for hitting. Little Tommy is 6 and Harry is 8. And one of them has something the other one wants. The big one wants it. He goes punch right in the face. And down the little one goes. He's got it. Does it work? That's what we call reinforcement. So this helpfulness can have several things. This is helping Susan and helping Tommy and being nice to the dog and being nice to mother, being polite. You can put anything you want on this. It's very powerful. And you reward what you want. You're shaping behavior that we're going to get into. This as soon as then principle. This is Grandma's rule. First do this and then you can play. As soon as your homework is done, you may watch television for a half an hour. As soon as the dog is fed and your chores are finished and your room is clean, you can eat dinner, as long as it's not after 6 o'clock. As soon as then. Do you understand? That's a very, very important principle. It doesn't have to be said too much. Remember again, I emphasize the 10 good reinforcements for every correction. That way the child's self-esteem is improved. Don't have a happy remark for every 25 criticisms. Don't do that. We need to do this every week and review that.